Hi, welcome to the Woodshed. Guys have asked me numerous times to show them how I make the staves for a bucket using my machines at home. I have a Delta table saw, and as you can see I've attached a fence to it today. All it is an old scrap piece of shelving. Straight edge though, that's imperative. You gotta have a straight edge. I have it clamped down with 2 C-clamps so the board can't go anywhere during the entire process. Then I raise my blade just enough. Here, I'll bring you this piece here to show you. Just enough to catch the board. And then I make it a pass through all my boards, and then I just make small 32nd to a 16th of an inch raise in the board and pass through it again. And as you'll see later in the video, I do both sides of the bore, so I always make sure that the cove is in the center of the board. Okay, I'm get ready to cove some boards here. Everybody's asked me how I do my buckets by machines at home. I've got all my boards over here cut out. I've got red cedar and white oak. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to run it through my table saw at an angle, just simply using the table saw to cove the wood. So I'm going to back this up a little bit so I have more room. Turn on the table saw and we'll do a little bit of coving. You flip it around so you make sure that the cove is in the center of the board. And as you can see, I have equal depth. So I'll set that one aside and pick up another one. And this is the same process through all the boards. I'm just taking really light passes. Very light passes. I don't like to bend the saw at all. Which doesn't pay, you can still see how even the cuts are. It's going right down the middle, right where I want it. This is red cedar from Tennessee. I'm also going to be doing the oak boards. When you have the saw set up, you want to do as many as you can. But with oak, I'll have to go a lot slower. I have to let the blade do the work. Pushing all the way through the blade. And then it pops up for me, and I lift it out. Push it a little too hard at first, I gotta let the blade catch up. across like that for the boards. My wife usually helps me. But since he told me camera, I've been doing it myself. Then I'll make let the saw wind down. I'll make another fine adjustment on the blade. I'll raise it about 1/16 of an inch, and I'll do one last final cove to where it'll be all the way out to the edge of the boards. Clean all this mess up, and then we'll get set up to do the staves individually. Good morning, everybody. I wanted to welcome you back to the wood shop. Coming in here, as you can see, I have all the boards coved nice. This is nice white oak. And I've got my saw already set up here. I've got the dimensions for my staves. I want them 10 inches long. And so now I need to cut 24 10-inch pieces. Set it off. Gently slide the next one up. Notice how I said gently. Having your saw set up with a stopwatch just makes it easy. And just this quick, I got 4 of my staves done. Welcome back to the Cooper shop. Here we call this the wood shed. As you can see from the last segment, I now have most of my 10-inch staves done. I have a nice little cart here. I call that my project cart. I put all my staves in there and stack them before I go to the next segment. I've readjusted my stop. I'm now going to make the handle staves. These are all the side staves. I need 12-inch handle staves. So I'll cut them out real quick. Just to help me set up on the next segment. Now we'll be going over to the table saw, and I'll be getting my stave jig set up, and I will start beveling all of these staves. Okay, those of you that have asked how I set my bevels, some of you have requested my gauges. This is my stave jig. It's very simple, made out of scrap wood. It just, if you can look at the angle, it widens out as you go down. That's what I'll be using to set my staves in when I'm ready to go. But I'm going to have 10 staves in this bucket. So that's 20 edges. You divide that by 360, 72. So I'm going to have my trusty little digital gauge. I know a lot of guys don't like those. And hopefully it'll work fine today. We'll calibrate it to 0. And I just stick it here on my table saw. And I start going. I need it to go over to 72. And it's going nice and slow. I hate having bifocals. And I'm slowing down because I'm just about there. Oh, come back a little. And right there, 72 on the money. So I take my digital gauge off. and we will shut it down. I'll just put it right here in my cart for now. And remember, this is the jig I'll be using, and here's my 10-inch staves. So I'll drop my blade back down. I wouldn't recommend this at home for those of you that are watching, because I will have my fingers very close to the blade. What I do is I set my stave and I just have it cutting just a little bit, just enough. Now what I'll do is I just want to catch the corner here. So I'll bring my fence over, line it up, and then I might have to make 2 or 3 passes, and I'll back it off, and this is how I set up my jig. Okay, it looks very good. But there's a problem. I still have a little bit of a flat lip right here on the edge. So I have to bring my fence over just a smidgen. That's a technical term. We'll knock it over a smidgen and I'll run it through again. Unfortunately, it doesn't have a zoom right now, but as you can see now, my entire side has a bevel. Just like that, it bevels out a little bit. What I have to do is go through all of my staves. I have 30 staves here to do. I'll use my #1 jig, and then I'll shut the saw off. I'll readjust my fence for the #2 stave to do the other side. Now we're done here in the project table. All of stave #1, which is the one side of the staves. Now I have to switch over to my second jig. This actually has almost like an inverted angle to it. So what I'll do is I have to reset up my fence here to get it to where it's going to fit, which means I usually have to make it a little bit wider. So for right now, I'll just move it out a little, run it through, and see if I have to readjust it. And then we'll go from there. my wife brought up a really good point. It's really hard to see the taper. When I just show you one board, just notice that the bottom and the top have a little bit of a taper. I thought we would stop right now and I would show you that at the bottom is just a fraction over 3 inches. The top is almost a full, sorry, do it this way, 3.5 inches. And as you can see from the coving aspects of everything, when I put them together, you can start to see the shape of the bucket. It's going to be nice and round, inside, perfectly inside circle. And I'll show you another part. You got 5.5 inches. This is going to be the top of the bucket, and then at the bottom it's going to be about 5 inches. So I have, just in these two, I have about a 1/2 inch taper from the top to the bottom. So when I get all these staves together, it'll come out perfect and have a nice bevel to it. Welcome back. I'm ready now to assemble my bucket. As you can see, I have my hose clamps. When I'm in my home shop here at work, in the wood shed, I use hose clamps. They work really well to hold these things together. I have my stack of 10-inch staves. I have a stack here, my 2-handle staves, and my spring clamps, and my hammer, and I have a screwdriver to tighten up the bands. I try to lay everything out before I put it together. So what I do is I start with one, and I'll put it clamped clear up at the top. Then I'll put it straight across from me. I'll bring in another one and set it in just like that. That way I can keep my hands free and just start adding staves just like this. Taper, the narrow side is at the top. I assemble my buckets, which my wife doesn't understand, but I do them upside down. Because that way I can wedge in my staves from the bottom and then they'll go in. It's a lot easier to do it that way than to try to come in from the other way. Okay, I've got to move this one over just a little bit so that I can bring this one up in there, and I'll push it tight. And that's the great thing about using spring clamps here, is it helps me keep everything nice and snug. Reclamp it, it's good to go, and then I can add the rest of my staves. For those of you that may ask what a stave is the actual side piece to a bucket. Right now I'm just worrying about tight fit, getting all the joints tight. Now this one here might be a little trouble getting it in, so what I'll do, I'll simply loosen up my clamp. Good thing about these kind of clamps is I can spread them, slide my stave up in there, set it down in, reclamp. Oh, I can tighten it a little better than that. There, just do it by hand. Snap it down in there, and then I'll snug it just enough to where the clamp is getting tight. Now I can remove the spring clamps. No, nothing there holding it together. I just push these down a little bit, and then by hand, I'll go in and kind of readjust, make them all nice and smooth here inside. That's the great thing about coving process. If you take your time when you're coving it to do it nice and smooth, when you go to do this kind of a bucket, it'll come together really nice. So now I'll snug it up. A lot of times I use a drill to do it, but if I want to save on my bands, do it like this. And then I'll raise the bottom hoop up just a little bit, reclamp it down, and then I'll take a little bit of time here and clamp that in. Now, my wife had a question, is why do I do this? And she says, well, it's upside down. Well, yeah, I explained that because it's easier to get the staves in when you're first assembling it. And now that I have them in, what I have to do is I tap these down. So I just come over to the edge of my table and I get the handle clamp, just tap it down. And I want to, oh, went a little just a fuzz too far. You can tell I'm from the Midwest. I use words like fuzz and smidgen. And now I did that one, so I'll snug it up a little bit more. And I'll have to do both bands because it loosened up everywhere. Okay. Now it's a little bit more snug. Now I'll bring this over and I'll do it the exact same way. And one thing is you take the end of the hammer and put it right on the edge, and then that, you heard it. It bottomed out. Bucket's just a little, but I'll get that all figured out when I turn it over. Now I'll snug up my bands. Again, I'm not fully tight yet. I'm just getting them a little bit snugger. Is that a word? Snugger? And there, I turn it over. Now what I do with my hammer is I go around and tighten and flush. And if I have a stave that I'm just not real happy with, I can go in there like that and I just move it around and just make sure everything is going. Now I can go ahead and do my final tightening. And as you can see, it still has all these pointed edges. When I'm done, this bucket will be perfectly round, but as you can see from the inside, look at how nice and smooth that is, all the way around. So the next episode, the next clip, you'll see me putting the bottom in with my router. As you can see, I've got my router table set up. It's just a very simple router table. It's one of the old Craftsman styles. The fence has been removed. It has a little router, flat router bit in it. It's going to put my little groove in for the buckets. We'll walk around here, grab my wooden bucket. It's going to make some noise. I have it in my clamps. I will set it on here and I'll slowly work it around. I usually go around 2 or 3 times. I never try to go in the full depth at first. But then when I lift it up, you can see that my groove now is all the way around, symmetrical in the body, same thickness, same depth, all the way around. And that's exactly what I want to see. Now just 2 more buckets to go.